tonight.
And another colonial way of doing business.
Criticism swirls around safety measures for a proposed Saskatoon shelter. A grain handler strike could have big impacts on Saskatchewan farmers. And the Riders finally pick up a win with a new weapon in their arsenal.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Tuesday, September 24th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. I'm Ethan Williams in for Sam McKeag. Thanks for joining us. The City of Saskatoon is upgrading the safety plan for a new proposed downtown shelter, but not everyone thinks what's being offered is such a good idea. Pratush Dayal reports.
A surrounding chain link fence and extended hour security guards. Those are two of the City of Saskatoon's safety measures for this proposed 30 to 40 bed downtown shelter. But the plan is already drawing criticism.
Paternalistic and another colonial way of doing business.
That's how Saskatoon Tribal Council Chief Mark Arcand feels about having chain link fence around the facility.
We don't need that facility to look like a jail facility to keep people in and out. The best way to do this is to have hope for people and make trust not acceptable, right? Our people have been institutionalized their whole lives, and it's not good reconciliation.
Arcand also says the proposed downtown shelter is receiving special treatment compared to the current STC shelter.
They're promising everything to this 210 location, so how come they're not doing the same thing to Salvation Army and to our emergency wellness center? So I'm really concerned about it. There's got to be a fairness.
But the Ministry of Social Services says the operational funding for emergency shelters is consistent across service providers. It also says the money includes enough to cover security measures for the facility.
Some security is needed. That's been our experience here, and I know other shelters in town experiencing some of the same challenges we have, that some form of security is certainly helpful.
Taylor says part of that safety plan is proper consultation with people in the neighborhood. That's exactly what a business in the neighborhood told us, that while it's reassuring to see increased safety plans, there should have been better consultation.
Residents have to be at the table. Businesses have to be at the table. We need to figure out proactive ways.
Cynthia Block is a current city councillor for the area and also running for mayor. Block says she still has a lot of concerns about the shelter, but she's grateful there's a safety plan.
I was happy to see that administration was going to work proactively to make sure there was a security plan.
If the City Council approves the current plan, the provincially funded shelter will start operating in this building this winter. Pratish Dayal, CBC News, Saskatoon.
The province says it has evidence that supports its pushback against federal environmental policies. Last December, Ottawa laid out caps and reductions for greenhouse gas emissions. Now the province says that policy could mean a loss of $50 billion and thousands of jobs if the federal plan goes ahead. The minister says that's due to a drastic cut in oil production.
You enable backfilling by other jurisdictions, which are far less well-regulated, far less clean, and you target, again, speaking of favoritism, you target your own country and you benefit others.
Still, one environmental advocate tells CBC the report cited by AIR underestimates the negative impacts of climate change. Meanwhile, the federal government says the province is trying to politicize the regulations despite the collaboration it's had with Saskatchewan. Ottawa says it's focused on reducing oil and gas emissions, not production. Grain handlers at 6 grain terminals in the Vancouver area are now on strike after talks to reach a new contract failed. Georgie Smythe has more on how this could have major impacts on Canadian farmers.
Workers at several Metro Vancouver grain terminals walked off the job this morning. They headed to the picket lines at 7 a.m. local time, 3 days after their union served that strike notice. Both the union, which represents more than 600 members, and the employer, the Vancouver Terminal Elevators Association, say they could not come to an agreement on a new contract. They've been bargaining on these new terms since November last year. Wages, pension benefits, scheduling and overtime averaging are among the sticky issues. According to Canadian grain farmers, more than half of all Canadian grown grain last year moved through these affected terminals.
Vancouver exports about 28 to 30 million metric tons of grain a year. So for every day we're shut down, that's $35 million of export potential that we're losing.
We also spoke to the union about how potentially disruptive this work stoppage could be.
There is long-reaching consequences. We, in the end, will still get the grain out when the time comes, when we get a contract. But we didn't take this decision lightly. The farmers are our brothers. They're the people who supply us the product that we ship, we clean, and we grade and we blend. So we're very cognizant of how it impacts them.
We've also heard from the Labour Minister, Stephen McKinnon. In a tweet, he said he'd spoken with both the GWU and the Vancouver Terminal Elevators Association yesterday. At my request, parties have agreed to resume negotiations alongside federal mediators, adding after a bumper crop summer, Canadian farmers and businesses need to get their harvest to market, and parties need to work hard to get a deal. But as it stands here in Vancouver, these workers remain at the picket lines. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
And here in our province, farmers say the strike is threatening their bigger than average harvest. Grain farmers worry even a short stoppage will backlog the tightly wound supply chain. This could make it impossible to deliver their product or get paid. They say it's a gut punch, particularly after the damage of last month's rail stoppages.
Again, like that's immediately what I think is here's another issue that's hit our supply chain that's going to have a huge effect on Saskatchewan producers as we try to export our crop. And it's just never ending cycle of stuff that comes up that affects our supply chain.
Boxall says disruptions can take weeks to recover from and harm Canada's credibility as a reliable exporter. He says the rights of workers and employers must be respected, but he wants Ottawa to do more to avoid these disputes in the first place. The hearing on the province's appeal into the latest battle over the pronoun consent law has now wrapped up, and the court has reserved its decision on the appeal. Shlok Talati has more from Court of King's Bench in Regina.
The court heard from 9 different parties over the last 2 days. The province had passed the Parents' Bill of Rights last fall after using the notwithstanding clause to sidestep some sections of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The law requires students under 16 to get parental consent if they are to use preferred names or pronouns at school. Then earlier this year, the Court of King's Bench ruled that a challenge to the law could go ahead. And now, the province is trying to have that ruling reversed. It's arguing that the court doesn't have jurisdiction to make a decision or assess the legality of a law after the notwithstanding clause has been used. Egal Canada represents the respondents' You Are Pride, a local LGBTQ advocacy group. Egal has argued that the Parents' Bill of Rights is unconstitutional because it violates multiple sections of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
And it's easy to be patient with the courts because I know the courts are working so quickly. It's devastating and heartbreaking to think about the young people who continue to be harmed as a result of the policy and as a result of the restrictions placed on the schools to, act in their best interests.
The Saskatchewan government argues it's not evading scrutiny by using the notwithstanding clause. Instead, it says it's only shifting scrutiny from judicial accountability to democratic accountability. The court also heard from New Brunswick and Alberta governments. They're 2 of the 11 interveners in this case. Egal says the hearing could set precedent for provinces that have or are looking to roll out similar policies or laws in the future.
This is all about the role of the courts once the government uses the notwithstanding clause, and we believe that the courts retain a really important role, and that's where we differ with the government. So this case has huge precedential value across the country.
The timeline on the case remains unclear, and until the court makes a decision, schools are required to get parental consent if a student chooses to use a preferred name or a pronoun. Shlok Talati, CBC News, Regina.
The province has given more information on its decision to lower the age of eligibility for breast cancer screening. It's gone down from age 50 to 40. The new policy takes effect in January. Mammograms will be provided to people with no breast cancer symptoms such as lumps or skin changes, as well as those who are not on active follow-up for breast cancer and have been cancer-free for 5 years. Saskatchewan's Minister of Health says dropping the screening age will increase demand, which will require more healthcare workers.
The expansion will take effect through a phased approach that will gradually reduce the age of eligibility down to 40 to allow for the opportunity to recruit the necessary resources. And that's why in consultation with our frontline healthcare providers, with NORA and the Cancer Foundation, the Cancer Agency, other healthcare providers, trying to figure out how do we best accommodate that, make sure that this is the right thing to do, to be able to lower the screening age. But how do we do that? How do we stage it out so that we can do it in a way where we're able to build up the capacity?
Meanwhile, the Cancer Foundation of Saskatchewan is launching a fundraising campaign to raise more than $3 million to expand screening services. The money would be used to buy a second mobile unit with a new digital mammography machine to use in rural Saskatchewan. The foundation also wants to buy 2 new mammogram machines to be used in Regina and Saskatoon. Well, after 6 straight losses and a tie for good measure, the Saskatchewan Roughriders are back in the win column, beating the Calgary Stampeders 37-29 Friday. It also marks the first time in 2 years the team has won a game after Labor Day. Quarterback Trevor Harris completed 16 of 18 passes and ran for a touchdown, but it was a newcomer to the green and white who stole the show. Running back Raquel Armstead ran for a season-best 206 yards rushing in his first game with the Riders. Over 100 of those were in the first half of the game alone. It's still a ways off from the Riders' all-time one-game rushing record of 268 set by George Reed, but it's still an impressive performance from the former Ottawa Red Black, who was released from that team earlier this month. But Armstead isn't one to make a big deal about his big game.
It doesn't really matter. I got to go do it again. So for me, I got a what's next mentality. I have since college. And, I just want to make sure it ain't a fluke. So for me, I'm just fighting this week to prove it wasn't a fluke.
Do we get that performance every week? Sure, I hope so, but I just know that the guys they're just locked into the details of, what it is on each play to execute. And he's one of those backs that, turn a small hole into a big one, and he's got enough speed in the second level to turn it into a big play. So we're happy to have him, round of applause, but next week.
And Armstead won't have long to wait to face his former team. The Riders host the Red Blacks this Saturday at Mosaic Stadium. Game time is 1 o'clock. Well, not often you can hit the water this late in the year, but the warm weather and sunshine certainly making it feel like summer during these first few official days of fall. And if you thought today was warm, well, just wait. There's even more heat on the way. Riley Lachuk brings us the details in his forecast when we come back.
The weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac. Employee pricing is on now.
Well, how about this? A gorgeous early fall day across much of the province, including in Saskatoon. And Riley Lachuk has been keeping an eye on our weather today and has an update for us now. Riley?
Well, certainly, Ethan, summertime warmth, the theme of the day today, really across much of the province. Have a look at some of these daytime highs from today. Regina getting to 27, Saskatoon outlook 28 degrees this afternoon. Some of these temperatures, putting this into perspective, we should be around 16 for a daytime high this time of the year. So these temperatures certainly quite a bit warmer than seasonal, and this trend continues. We could even crack 30 in a few locations throughout the day tomorrow. This because of a ridge of high pressure that is setting in over Western Canada. Not a lot to talk about. Not a lot to see on satellite and radar besides clear skies through south and central. Through northern parts of the province, a bit of cloud. This could bring us some showers as we get through the overnight period and some wind warnings along the Rocky Mountains. So we'll expect some wind through parts of Saskatchewan tomorrow, which I'll get into in just a moment here. As we get into the overnight period tonight, skies stay clear and temperatures actually staying pretty warm for overnight temperatures for this time of the year. As that high pressure ridge, you can kind of see the outline of where some of these upper level winds are going here, funneling some of this precipitation and instability a little bit further north. So far northern parts of the province could pick up a couple of millimeters of rain. I think the best chance, though, as we get into Thursday for some showers, particularly in extreme western parts of the province. For Saskatoon, for Regina, I think a slim chance of maybe an isolated shower, but by and large, we're keeping the warmth and for the most part, the sunshine as we head through Thursday and even into Friday. In terms of rainfall accumulation, really nothing, traced to maybe 5 millimeters, most of that through northwestern parts of the province. Places like Uranium City could pick up a couple of millimeters, but aside from that, really just looking at a trace to a couple of millimeters through central and southern parts of the province. What we will feel as we get into Wednesday, though, will be the winds as we time this out here. Looking at winds out of the south, gusting to 40 or 50 by the lunch hour. Could see some gusts even up to 60 or higher as we get through the later part of the afternoon. So really watch the winds as we get through the rest of the day on Wednesday. I mentioned we could crack 30, we could crack 31 tomorrow in Regina, a sunny sky. Watch those winds through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, staying in the high 20s as we get through really the rest of the work week. Into the weekend, we keep the sunshine as well, although the ridge of high pressure does start to break down a little bit as we get into the weekend, and we see temperatures really dropping down to something a little bit more seasonal as we get to the beginning of next week. For Saskatoon, much the same, 31 tomorrow, south winds gusting to 40 through the afternoon. We do keep the breeze as we get through the rest of the work weekend. Temperatures staying above seasonal into the early part of next week. Ethan, we could see some lows close to freezing by next week as well.
Okay, well, watch out for that. Thanks, Riley.
We have to relate back to the treaty because that's our base. That's what was negotiated with us as a nation, as treaty people.
And Regina City Hall will now have a visual reminder of that treaty. 2 commemorative medals honoring the signing of Treaty 4 were unveiled today. One will be put in the city's council chambers, the other in the mayor's office. The medals were created by Treaty Artwork Incorporated and are part of a series of events held by the city of Regina to mark the 150th anniversary of the signing of Treaty 4. Stay with us. We'll have more news after the break. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is at the United Nations today. He commented on the recent escalation in fighting between militant group Hezbollah and Israel.
The people of Lebanon, Lebanese Canadians, are watching this and incredibly worried. We need to make sure there is de-escalation, both by Israel and Hezbollah. We need to protect civilian lives. We need to make sure we're moving towards peace and stability in the entire region. And Canada is going to continue to be there to step up and call for peace and help create, once again, that peace and stability that we need.
Trudeau is in New York for the opening of the UN General Assembly. Australia's consumer watchdog is suing the country's 2 largest grocery chains. The lawsuits allege shoppers were fooled by misleading discounts. The government says it's taking the move very seriously.
If this is found to be true, it's completely unacceptable. This is not the Australian spirit. Customers don't deserve to be treated as fools by the supermarkets. They deserve much, much better than that.
The lawsuits claim Woolworths and Coles may have hiked product costs for a short period and later discounted to a level to still be higher than the previous price. The supermarket giants have faced accusations of profiting from consumers at a time when a lot of Australian households are also facing high interest rates, housing prices, and energy bills.
Here's a look at some of your wake-up temperatures as we head into Wednesday. Some of your overnight lows, 16 degrees, a normal daytime high for this time of the year, waking up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning in Maple Creek at 20 already tomorrow afternoon. These are some of the places, particularly Assiniboia through extreme southern Saskatchewan, could even crack 32 tomorrow afternoon. A few single digits on the board in northern parts of the province, but tomorrow a hot and a windy day tomorrow. 12 degrees first thing in the morning for Regina, up to 24 by noon, and looking at temperatures cracking the 30 mark as we get through the afternoon. Watch those west winds, 40 gusting to 60. In Saskatoon, much the same, waking up to 12 tomorrow morning under a sunny sky, 23 by noon, and Ethan, just about 30 in Saskatoon by the time we get to 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Shorts and t-shirt weather. All right, thanks, Riley. And before we leave you, Breakout West kicks off tomorrow in Saskatoon. It's a music festival and musician development conference that attracts artists and industry types from across Western Canada. The Western Canadian Music Awards are also a big part of the week, and one Regina event manager and promoter will be given the Heritage Award at that event. The Morning Edition's Stephanie Langenegger spoke to Zandra Kazas earlier today.
3 decades ago, met a band called The Age of Electric and ran their fan club. And just through them, I started to learn a lot about the music industry. And because of them, I met a lot of people. And then I just always was going to concerts, And just by accident, the producer of Eclipse back then basically headhunted me. She left me a post last night saying so, and it was true. She came to my work one day and refused to leave until I agreed to go become a reporter on this television show. So that's really how it all started.
For those people not of my vintage, I remember Eclipse, but what can you tell us about what kind of a show that was?
It was a weekly entertainment television show where we interviewed mostly musicians, but anyone in the arts really. And it was like local artists and then touring artists.
I mentioned a couple, Glenn Campbell and Behemoth, pretty wide mix.
Exactly.
Who stands out for you when you think back?
Well, for me, I mean, we did so many amazing interviews, but just for me personally, one of my favorite interviews was Glenn Campbell. And just because he's so iconic and just so legendary, and, it was the only interview where I thought I was going to throw up before it even started. Like, I was so nervous to interview him because I didn't want to screw up.
What will you be thinking about as you accept your award on the weekend in this really, long and successful career that you've made in the business that you love?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. Maybe just please don't trip. But I'm kidding. Again, I'm just so thankful. I always think, people are always thanking me for bringing a band in, but I, always say to them, well, thank you for buying a ticket and thank you for attending the events, because without people showing up to the events, there's no need for me. So, I need people to come out and support the artists and the events, just, I guess, as much as they need me to put it on, I suppose. And then, going even beyond that is, I'm just so thankful that musicians have given me the opportunity to work with them over the years and, be a tiny, tiny footprint in their journeys as well.
And congrats to Zandra on that award. That is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/Sask, subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel, or download the CBC News app. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.